Okay, this is Spokane Preinspection. This begins our inspection of the 2018 Audi A3. We're starting with the engine bay inspection. Right away, I see that the engine bay has been washed. It's been sprayed down with kind of a polishing cleaning material, chemical. I am seeing a significant amount of some form of deposition of some oily residue near the front of the engine that might be related to power steering or maybe some air conditioner oil, maybe from a previous repair. I'm not seeing any damage on the crush rail. That's right where that bolt is right there. That would indicate a collision issue on the front right of the vehicle. The crush rail appears okay. There is a significant amount of oxidation on the engine mount aluminum. That's not necessarily indicative of anything deeper, but it could indicate the vehicle has been in a more of a humid climate or near kind of an ocean situation, maybe on the West Coast. Significant amount of dirt and oil deposition on the back of the frame running down the unibody, running down the passenger side. Turbo shield is not rusted, looks okay for its age, but significant amount of dirt and oil deposition down here I'm seeing. The ABS module is dry. I'm not seeing any rodent damage or anything on that. I'm inspecting the harness. I'm not seeing any damage to the harness, at least the portion of the body or engine bay harness. Traveling over to the center of the engine bay. See if I can get this vanity cover off. We're going to inspect under here for any damage. Okay, so that's probably the condition of the dirt that came into the shop prior to the intake of the vehicle. That is somewhat acceptable for the age. If it lived itself maybe in a dusty climate, maybe it's not too terrible. I'm wondering why I'm seeing some, that's the seal right there for the, appears to be the high pressure fuel pump, or at least part of it. Yeah, high pressure fuel pump. Already seeing some rust at the very top of the engine. I'm wondering why that is. Some fairly decent amount of aluminum oxidation right back here. It's starting to actually powder. You can see on my finger, it's kind of starting to get pretty powdered. A lot of oxidation going on here. This can be indicative of future leaks. The problem with this kind of oxidation is it will begin to work its way down into these seals. So if you can kind of see where it looks like that powder up there, that seal in here, that's the valve cover seal. That powder will begin to work its way under those seals and it'll start to leak. So it's not leaking right now, but that's where the pathway on that goes. So moving over to the right side, the air filter box is sealed with star bits. It's not a hand release. I can't get into that right now. Harness on the PCM, powertrain control module, looks in good condition. Harness comes back in the front end, looks good over here. We're looking in the fuse box. I'm looking for any damage, anything. That comes back nice and clean. That looks good. Looking at the battery blanket. We're going to pull this up, inspect the battery. I'm looking for, I don't see a date code on here. Terminals are clean. Ground strap is clean. Ground strap back here is clean. That's not a problem. The battery compartment comes back clean. Thoughts and assessment for the engine bay. This car has lived in a very dirty environment. I'd be concerned as to, now it could have been fixed. I'd be concerned as to why there's so much oil deposition over here and what has happened in its past, and the oil and grease deposition back here. So this car at some point in time was very, very, very filthy in here, and I'd want to know the answer for that, what had happened on there. You can see that these lines right here, these steel lines for the AC system are very shiny and clean. There's chemicals that you can spray that will help strip off this oxidation, which you can kind of see where there's a reduction in powder and flake on the alternator, but there's a lot more under here. So this engine bay was probably a lot more filthy than what it's being presented as right now. I wouldn't say that's an immediate deal breaker, but this vehicle for a 2018, I kind of want to know more about the history of the engine bay. So my biggest concerns would be the condition of the top end and why it's so oxidized up here, and to be prepared for, few years down the road, maybe less, that you're going to start seeing these leaks come out. Another example is this is the cover for either a wet belt timing chain, which I would strongly hope that it's not. A wet belt timing cover where there is a timing belt, but it's actually submerged in oil, which is a trend we're seeing in Europe right now, and making its way over here. Or that this is timing chain cover, it's plastic, and it mates to the metal valve cover, but you can see the gasket is right here. There's the rubber gasket. Well, if this oxidation begins making its way under this timing cover, that's a whole repair. It might maybe engine out, not too sure, but that can create leaks. So we've got a mating of a plastic timing cover with a metal valve cover with all this oxidation. So we're gonna draw some connections between that. Turbo routing, everything looks fine back here. Nothing jumping out at me that's making me think there's rodent damage, anything loose. Not hearing any noises, chatter, or whining from the turbocharger. So that's the engine bay inspection. Okay, starting the interior inspection of the vehicle. Looking for panel gaps, any sort of anything that might indicate a replaced panel. Checking for changes in the millimeters between front left quarter panel and hood lining. That comes back clean. Same thing, checking down the door. That comes back good. Looking at rocker panel, if there's a significant separation, like it's been high centered maybe, not seeing that. Panel gaps on the center of the two doors on the B pillar. That comes back clean. Looking at C pillar, coming back to the rear door. That looks good. That gets a clean bill of health. Checking rear bumper cover. I'm pushing on this to see if there's any broken retaining clips, like it was backed over a curb or a stop in a parking spot and it got yanked on. Likewise, continuing along it, pulling on it, not getting any play on that. That's nice and firm. See, coming around to passenger side, same thing. That's nice and firm. Checking panel gap, C pillar, rear passenger. That looks square. Checking rocker panel. A little bit of separation on this front rocker panel. I see this in this can be shot. This not pointing fingers, but this kind of appearance or maybe possibly damage. This is often from lifts. So the problem with these Euro vehicles, these German vehicles, have very specific lift points where you need to lift on them, and they can be very difficult to lift. And so if there's a shop that's unfamiliar with that, and not being, you gotta be real careful with it. And if they're not, it will crush into this, because there's very specific. The whole underside of the vehicle is not load bearing. There'll only be a very specific spot where you can do that. So this is the kind of damage that's typical of maybe being pushed in with a carriage arm on a lift. So that would make what I would suspect why it's so in this narrow point of damage, it doesn't run along. That would be a suspicion there. Good panel gap on the front A pillar for the passenger door, and good panel gap on the B pillar door on the same side. Moving to quarter panel, front quarter panel right side, that looks good, comes back clean. Bumper cover, see, pulling and pushing. All the clips feel good. Pulling and pushing on grill, that feels good. Bumper cover good. Center, going over to the driver's side, that's good. Not seeing, it's a white car, it's hard to tell about contamination. Not seeing significant deposition from tar, or I'm not seeing repairs. I'm not seeing differences in paint coloration or oxidation. The car is a little bit dusty from the dealership. I'm not seeing any significant differences in tinting or hue that would imply that there's been any replaced paneling, or say like a trunk or anything like that, or top damage, top down damage. The exterior, with the exception of the front right for the rocker panel up here, gets a clean bill of health. That from the external view, this does not imply that this car has been in any sort of collision damage in terms of like fender benders. Thank you. Okay, I'm starting the underbody inspection of the 2018 Audi A3. I apologize if it's a bit difficult to see on the camera. What I'm looking for is signs of rust, signs of high centering, any sort of anything hanging from the vehicle. I'm gonna check control arms, bushings, excessive rust, following the exhaust up. I'm on the passenger side right now. Looking for any sort of mechanical damage. Gonna run the body panel up here. Let's see what's going on up here. The damage here, I don't know if so that would be the standoff right there that should be used. That inner rail is where the pad should go for the lift. It's possible that, yeah, see that print right there? So that round print right there, that kind of circle, that's what happened. It got lifted on a carriage arm. They didn't check it because you got to go deeper on these German cars, where that you have to go farther up to that rail up top, not out here on the plastic. That's what caused that damage. Very particular way you got to lift these. So we're gonna go around the front. I'm looking for leaks. Looking to see if anything's wet underneath. Looking for any sort of drips on the belly pan. German cars use a lot of underbody aero, a lot of shielding and things like that. But if it's easy to see an arrested leak or a leak that is continuing if you have an underbody panel that is wet, unlike the others. I'm not seeing anything like that. I do apologize. I can see more in person than the camera is showing. Let's see, going on the other side. Same thing. I'm not seeing any leaks or anything dripping from the vehicle, nor are there any smells. Proceeding on to driver's side. So going under here, same thing. Let's look over here. Not seeing anything over here. Front left, checking rear left, looking at control arms. Not seeing anything hanging, not excessive rust, no leaks in the rear. Looking under, following around. Okay, rear underneath gets a clean bill of health with the exception of the front right pad, the rocker panel damage from the last time it was lifted. Thank you. All right, so starting our trunk inspection. Primarily what I'm looking for in here is whether the safety tools or anything that did come equipped with the vehicle are still present, so that the prospective buyer of this car is not caught blindsided on the side of the road with no emergency roadside kit. I'm also looking for water damage. Frequently, with the exception of what you may find underneath the floorboards, this is the second deepest part of the car in terms of like water maybe pooling. There's also rain channels that might get clogged and lead down in here. Looks like a good handful of parts maybe left over from the previous owner. I'm gonna guess these are coils. Looks like somebody was throwing coils at this car. Yeah, these are ignition coils. These are O'Reilly's Import Direct ignition coils. Either the originals are in the box or they're in the car, whatever. Spark plugs, oil changes, oil filter, so extra parts in here. Why? We don't know. Is that just was the customer doing a normal maintenance, service, or is something more going on? Looks like emergency roadside kit is here. Scissor jack is down here. It looks like the handle for that's here. Tire donuts here. Retainers here. That looks very nice. How easy that is to get on and off in an emergency. We've got, I guess, what appears to be a screwdriver and some hex. That's probably for the lug nuts right there, lug bolts, I should say. I'm not seeing any water damage. I'm not seeing any pooling, any rodent infestation, anything like that. Other than wondering what these things are or what they're for or why they were serviced, the trunk gets a clean bill of health, and it looks like appears that most, if not all, the roadside kit is in the trunk. This concludes the trunk inspection. Thank you. Okay, so we have performed the interior inspection. Gets a clean bill of health right off the bat for overall functionality. Everything inside works, the seats work. There's no damage on anything other than, I mean, this is normal wear and tear from age. I would consider that acceptable. Gauges work, infotainment center works. There is no issues that could be documented with the up down of the screen. We cycled the ignition in the module multiple times. It didn't fail or perform intermittently. It functioned exactly as it should have for us. However, while we were driving, we stepped on the pedal, we brought it up a full wide open throttle, and immediately kicked a check engine light within about 10 minutes of driving the vehicle, and we lost boost. So there's no boost on the vehicle right now. Went into our scanner. We've currently got an active code for turbocharger boost control position sensor circuit range performance. So there is a position sensor probably for controlling maybe a wastegate or some valving in the turbocharger, that maybe the sensor is having some issues and is setting this code. So currently the car is in somewhat of a limp mode. There is no boost. The boost has been disabled to protect the vehicle. I would have the dealer address this. I'm wondering why the code wasn't on prior. I don't know if maybe these codes, they've been cleared out and it's set just now, or maybe coincidentally it did fire up for us. The code set for us. Backing out, let's see, we've got a handful of other codes. On German vehicles, it's not too uncommon to have a fair amount of codes in one of these vehicles as they age. We've got air conditioning codes, airbag code. Let's check the airbag code. I wouldn't worry about the sound system or the infotainment electronics right now, but the two biggest ones would be engine control module and airbags, because that's safety. Oops, excuse me. Let's get back out of here. Well, let's just go ahead and see what it says. We might as well get in there. Halfway there anyways. Tuner for satellite radio deactivated. Okay, we're not even gonna worry about that. That would be inconsequential unless you wanted satellite radio, in which case that might be a firmware flash or something like that. So let's go to airbag now. That would be my concern. By the way, the battery, for battery health, the battery and the charging system is working correctly. I'm getting 14.8 volts. That's a little high, but again, on German vehicles, there's a lot of electrical demand. So that number to me, that's a very healthy charging system and a healthy battery. Let's go to trouble codes. Let's see what we find here. Passenger occupancy detection system control unit. Seat occupied recognition sensor at resistance too high. So another issue. So when it says resistance too high, what that's going to tell us is that there's either maybe a wire that's a terminal that's going bad. There's oxidation building up onto it. That means the computer is detecting that there's excessive resistance in the circuit. When there is excessive resistance in the circuit, the voltage goes down, so maybe the sensor is unable to work. So often when I see a high resistance setting, that means there's oxidation somewhere, a bad connector, maybe a corroded wire, something like that. It implies that this is under passenger occupancy detection system control unit, seat occupied recognition sensor mat. So there's a sensor mat, pressure sensor in that seat, and if there's any oxidation on the coil inside or on the terminals themselves, it might set this code. Something I would bring up with the dealership if concerned. I cannot tell you immediately if this would disable the system from working. I did not have a SRS light on the dash, so that tells me that the computer overall was not too concerned with the operation of the SRS system, the safety restraint system, which controls the airbags and the seat belts, but it has stored this code. It's calling it a passive sporadic code, so it's an intermittent fault code. It could point towards high moisture. That's kind of maybe something we witnessed in the engine bay, maybe more another one of those high moisture corrosion issues that we were seeing earlier. Let's back out of this. Yeah, so the biggest code that I want the dealership to address, there's no boost. This car has a turbocharger and it's not working. So the dealership again needs to go back in and be willing to address the boost sensor position code for the turbocharger for this vehicle. So one more time, just at the very end so you can see it. Okay, so that concludes the interior video of this vehicle. It gets a clean bill of health on the interior. And like I said, those are the codes that we scanned and witnessed for the vehicle. All right, so this is the conclusions video for the 2018 Audi A3 TFSI 2.0 liter. This car has a boost issue, so it's not going to be taken out on the highway without having boost functionality, turbocharger functionality. It's not going to be safe to operate on the highway. I did not overall find anything wrong with chassis, suspension, or steering on the surrounding surface streets. Nothing to indicate suspension issues. We have some pretty crappy roads around here, and it came back with a clean bill of health on chassis, suspension, and steering. I would hope to get it up onto a highway drive for checking high-speed lane changes and high-speed vibrations, maybe indicating something in a wheel, maybe an imbalance or something like that. These Audi wheels can be a bit expensive, so it's always nice to know if it's not the tire, it's the wheel. But with the boost system being disabled, we're not going to do a highway drive at this time. My final thoughts are, this vehicle has 13,000 miles on it. It's experiencing a boost issue. This is very typical of these vehicles when they reach this mileage. It may just be a sensor, and indeed very likely it is just a sensor. 6 months from now, it'll be another sensor. 3 months from now, it'll be another sensor. And it will just keep being sensors. It will be, you need to pay for the diagnostic, you need to get the sensor fixed, you need to keep going and going and going. And then once you've done the sensors and gone off back and forth, and by the way, you have to use Audi parts. Audi they have to be OE sensors, dealer sensors. So there's the cost associated with that. And then eventually, once the sensor issues are addressed, then we're going to move into abating any sort of upcoming leaks. There's a lot of plastic on metal mating on these vehicles, so that's something to be aware of. For a customer, if they like the vehicle, if they like how it drives, if they like the handling, they like the features, and they're aware of the cost of ownership for these vehicles, then they can be very fun vehicles to drive. If we're looking for a reliable daily commuter where you are going to go outside in January and get in this vehicle and drive off, the problem that we just witnessed after 10 minutes of getting on the road and kicking a check engine light is very indicative of how these vehicles will function once they reach a certain mileage. So again, it might be a small problem, it might be easily rectifiable, but they're typically continuing problems, and that's what you're going to experience. From a conclusion, from my standpoint, if you're looking for a reliable daily driver, I would not buy this vehicle. If you are looking for a fun vehicle that's sporty and you love how it looks and you love the interior and you're willing to deal with the cost of ownership that these vehicles present to their owners, by all means purchase this vehicle. But that concludes our inspection of the Audi 2018 A3. Thank you.